Ugh, this contrast. It's a shame with the Panasonic S1, there's nothing we can do about it. Unless, what if we just hop in the menu here? Oh yeah, oh that's so much better. We could just maybe throw a little saturation, a little bit of contrast on. Oh, there we go. Thank God for that new Panasonic S1 V-Log firmware update. Welcome back, DPReview TV viewers. It's Jordan here, and as promised, we're returning with another look at the Panasonic S1 now that we've received the V-Log firmware update, which had some really cool stuff on there as well, so let's see if it's worth it. So the light today is unbelievably contrasty, but fortunately Chris is shooting this entire episode on the S1 with the V-Log firmware on there, so hopefully it'll be able to handle this huge dynamic range. So before we start talking about the features of V-Log, why don't we talk about how you actually get it on your camera. Now it's the same system as the GH4 and GH5, which means it's a huge pain. So basically you have to buy a box from Panasonic that has your license key in it. However, that box, if it's anything like the GH4, GH5, it is generally out of stock all the time. But once you get that, you're gonna have to copy some of your camera files up onto the Panasonic server, add your update key, download it back onto the camera, and it will unlock all that software, which we all know was installed when you put the latest firmware update, the free one, on there anyways. But now that you've got it, let's talk about how you can use it. Okay, so we've installed the upgrade on the camera. Now you'll have the option to record in an MOV format. Selecting that, you can now go in and shoot 10-bit 422 at 150 megabits per second with all of your different color profiles. Now previously you were able to get 10-bit 420 if you recorded with the HLG profile, and that's how we recorded our previous S1 video. I love the look of it, but it's a fairly low data rate. And the big problem is, if you decided to shoot 4K 60, since 10-bit recording wasn't available for you, you had no option for a wider color space. But now, you can record in V-Log, even when recording in 4K 60. Really nice upgrade. It is only 8-bit, but at least you're getting some nice dynamic range in that mode. The most exciting upgrade for me when they announced this is we have full V-Log, the same one that we see on cameras like the EVA 1, the VariCam, Panasonic's very high-end cinema cameras, not the V-Log L profile that they've used for their other mirrorless cameras up till now. So what is the major difference? Primarily, you're going to see much better highlight retention with the full V-Log, and we shot this comparison here. You can see shadows are a little cleaner with the V-Log, but that's also probably due to the larger sensor. But the highlights here, you can see there's about a stop and a half, maybe even 2 stops more information hiding in there, and that's the big benefit. Beforehand, with the GH5, GH5S, we would often shoot on the HLG profile as opposed to log. There's actually a little more dynamic range there. But now you can choose. Do you want V-Log? Do you want HLG? Either way, you're getting awesome dynamic range. Another great feature they brought over from the GH5 and the GH5S is their V-Log View Assist. Now, this is not only going to apply Panasonic's general V-Log LUT, so while you're shooting you don't have to look at a gross gray image, or especially if you've got a client looking over your shoulder, you don't want them looking at a gross gray image. But also you can put your own LUTs on it. It's a bit of a process, but if you put them in the right folder on your memory card, you can load them up on the camera. And this is great if you want to switch between a couple different looks. It's a great feature. It's not the most intuitive out there, but I'm very happy to see it on this camera. Because we're masters at our craft, Chris has skillfully placed me in front of waves so I can talk about how now we finally have waveforms on the Panasonic S1. A lot of people are asking us, why do you do all of these video features where you request something from the manufacturers? This is why, because we asked for waveforms. Now we've got it in the S1. I really think it is the best way to meter out a scene. Unfortunately though, one thing that we also asked for in our waveform episode is the ability to also use it when you're shooting stills. That hasn't been added to the S1, but you still get waveforms when you're shooting any of the color modes, even if you're not using the 10-bit recording. It's an awesome feature, makes everything a lot easier. Now, I loved having the waveform on the GH5 and GH5S. However, if you were using the back display, the waveform looked like it took up about a quarter of your screen, made it really hard to shoot, and even if you used the EVF, it was still really filling up the frame. One of the great things with the S1 is we have these really high-res displays on both the back and especially when you're using the electronic viewfinder. So the waveform actually isn't that obtrusive. I would just always leave it on the screen while I'm shooting. Really nice upgrade. All right, time for a bitchy walk and talk, because when I first heard there was going to be a firmware update for the S1 with 10-bit and some other features, I was thinking, hey, we're going to get a full-frame GH5 out of it. However, there is still a bunch of features that camera has that we can't find on here. Most importantly, the slow motion on this is still automatic exposure only, which makes them basically useless for me. As well, we don't have the 400 megabit per second all intro recording. Now, I didn't use that a ton because they're big files, but it is a lot easier on your computer. And if there's a ton of motion in the frame, you might see an advantage with that. There's some smaller stuff as well, like synchro scan that let you really fine tune your shutter speeds, and also shutter angles. Now, we recently put out a video saying we need more cameras with shutter angles, not less. Last and probably least, honestly, for me, we don't have any vector scopes on this. I don't use them a ton while I'm shooting, but I use them all the time in post. I mean, again, they were on the GH5. It would be nice to have them here. Chris, are you crazy putting me in the shade with like this bright background over here? Are you just counting on Vlog to save you? I mean, that's a good test, I guess. Okay, so why are all those features missing from this S1 firmware? Well, if you've been paying attention, you may have noticed that Panasonic also pre-announced an S1H, a more video-centric S-series camera body. And I think it's safe to infer that a lot of the features that might be missing from the S1 will be very prominently displayed on the S1H. I don't know for sure, nobody does, but if I were a betting man.
Are you a betting man?
I'm not a betting man. So I know we don't typically dedicate an entire episode to a single firmware update, but with this new firmware, I really think that the S1 is really the most powerful hybrid mirrorless full-frame camera out there. And Panasonic seems to recognize that too, that this is almost an essential upgrade. That's why if you've already bought the camera, in a lot of regions, they're giving you this software for free. I think it's going to be heavily discounted if you buy it with the camera in the future, so they're trying to get it into as many people's hands as possible. Yes, it's a shame it's a paid upgrade, but that's not really that uncommon in the video world. Now, if you are primarily a video shooter, should you grab an S1? I think that's a little bit more difficult because we're still waiting to see the full specs for the upcoming S1H video-centric camera. We also don't know what the price on that's going to be, so it might be worth holding out until all of that's out there. But if you're a photographer who's looking to record some excellent video as well, this would be my #1 pick. Everyone, thanks for watching this episode. I know there's been a lot of me on the channel lately. Don't worry, I don't really care for it either. We'll be back to Chris next week talking about some more photo-centric things. But thanks so much for watching. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Make sure that you subscribe wherever the subscribe thing is, somewhere there. And we will see you all again very soon.